Good morning, grandchildren. This is a beautiful Lord's Day. I have a story for you, and it's a long story. It's going to take about 20 minutes to read this story, so Mommy may want to break the story up into a couple of parts for you, okay? So let's get started on this story. Good Lord's Day morning. I have a really neat book. This one is called The Donkey Who Carried a King. Now, the thing I really like about this book is it's a book about Jesus, but it doesn't violate the second commandment. And we know what the second commandment is that we wouldn't make any images of God. And so they don't have any pictures of Jesus in here, but it's about Jesus. So they did a really good job being faithful to the Bible and telling a good story. The Donkey Who Carried a King. Written by R.C. Sproul. The Son of Man came not to serve. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Matthew 20:28. He bore our sins in his body on the tree. 1 Peter 2:24. One day, a little boy named Riley came home from playing with some older boys in his neighborhood. He was crying as he came into his kitchen to find his mother. She saw him and said, "Riley, what's wrong?" Riley's lip trembled and he tried to wipe away his tears. He was 8 years old and he didn't like to cry, but he couldn't help it. He said, "Mommy, every time we play games, the other boys pick me last. It hurts so much." And there's Riley with that wild head of hair walking home. He is sad. He gets picked last. Just then, Riley's father and grandfather walked in. Riley's mother told them, "Riley's had a hard day. The other boys have been picking him last for their games." Riley's father put his arm around his son. "I understand that," he said. "Sometimes I was the last one picked for games when I was your age." Riley was surprised. "Really?" he asked. His father nodded. "Yes," he said. "I remember how much it hurt when it happened to me." Riley looked down. "I think they picked me last because I'm not very good at the games we play," he said. His father said, "Since your grandfather is here, maybe he can help you with this. What do you think, Grandpa? What should Riley do?" Grandpa thought for a second. Think, think, think. And said, "Riley, have you ever heard about the donkey who carried a king?" Ooh. So there they are in the kitchen and they're talking, and Grandpa is asking him if he's ever heard of the story of a donkey who carried a king. The corners of Riley's mouth tipped up in a smile, because he knew he was about to hear another one of Grandpa's wonderful stories. Grandpa has wonderful stories. Grandpas always do. "No, Grandpa," he said. "I've never heard that story, but I'd love to hear it now." So Grandpa sat down and set Riley on his knee. Riley didn't feel too old for that. "You know, Riley," Grandpa started, "several years ago I went to Jerusalem and I saw a funny sight. Lots of people rode on little donkeys. The donkeys in Jerusalem are small compared to the ones here in America. They only grow to be about 3.5 feet high. The sight of a grown man riding on one of these donkeys made me giggle. The man had to keep his knees bent way up to keep his feet from dragging on the ground, and the little donkey the man was riding just kept going right on down the street, bearing the man on his back. I want to tell you about a donkey just like that little donkey I saw in Jerusalem. The donkey in my story had never been picked for anything. He wondered whether he would ever be chosen for a job, but one day he was chosen for a special task. So there's a little donkey carrying a grown man, very small. So there's this little donkey, he never got picked for anything. Many years ago, there was a little donkey named Davy. He lived in a village close to the holy city of Jerusalem. He was too young to work, so he was kept in a pen. He had brothers and sisters, but none of them could play with him because they had jobs to do. Sometimes they carried packs of olives for their masters. Sometimes they worked for people in the community, and some of them even carried grown adults on their back. Davy didn't have to carry anyone or anything. All he did every day was stand and wait and eat and sleep. It was boring, and Davy was often unhappy because it seemed no one wanted him to do anything. So there he stands while all of his brothers and sisters are working away and carrying things and carrying people. And there's Davy in his little pen, all sad. The other donkeys who were kept in Davy's pen told stories about famous donkeys of history. One had belonged to a man named Balaam. A wicked king asked Balaam to give a prophecy against God's people. And Balaam was riding a donkey to the place where the people of God were camped, and an angel blocked his path. The donkey stopped, but Balaam couldn't see the angel. So he got very angry and he hit the donkey. Then the Lord gave the donkey the power to speak. The donkey asked, "What have I done to you that you have hit me?" Balaam said, "You're not treating me right." Then God let Balaam see the angel. The angel said, What you are planning to do is wrong." When Balaam heard that, he decided not to prophesy against the people of God. There's Balaam and his donkey. You can see there the donkey and Balaam, and there's the angel that's blocking their way. And there's all the donkeys talking about the story. They're telling the neat stories. At the end of the day, they've been working. Davy's been standing there bored. The donkeys also told a story about old Barnabas, one of the older donkeys who lived with them. Years before, Barnabas had lived in the town of Nazareth. He had an owner. His owner was Joseph, a carpenter. Joseph and his wife Mary, who was about to have a baby, had to go to his hometown of Bethlehem. Mary rode on Barnabas's back. When they arrived in Bethlehem, it was time for Mary's baby to be born. All the inns were full, so they spent the night in a stable where animals were kept. There, Mary had her baby. His name was Jesus. Shepherds came to the stable and worshiped baby Jesus. They knew he was the Messiah who had come to save his people. Afterward, Barnabas carried Mary and baby Jesus back to Nazareth. Davy liked to hear about famous donkeys and the important things they had done. He wanted to have a big job too, but his master never picked him to do anything. But one day, all that changed. There's Barnabas. He's the one that carried Mary, who's the mother of Jesus. There's a picture of them there journeying in the night with a pregnant lady sitting on Barnabas's back. That was Mary. How about that? It happened one morning when Davy was feeling especially down because he had nothing to do and could only eat and sleep. Davy saw two strangers coming. They spoke quietly to the owner. Davy tried to hear their conversation. They have big ears, so he leaned in to listen. I have a hearing aid to help me hear. He couldn't make out all their words, but he did hear one of the men say, "Because the Lord has need of him." Davy wondered what they were talking about. Davy's owner came to the pen. He opened the gate. He brought Davy out and led him to the two men. "Take this donkey," he said. "His name is Davy. No one has ever ridden him before, but I think he'll be able to do the job." Davy wondered, what are they going to have me do? Whatever. It seemed important to these men. So there's the two men talking to the owner and his son. And there's their goat, and there's Ma with the chickens. And there's Davy. Where's Davy? Oh, there's Davy. Davy's listening. See those ears? Those big donkey ears? He's got them perked up. He's trying to hear what's being said. They want Davy for something. No one's ever ridden on Davy before. They led Davy down the road. Soon he saw a crowd. The two men spoke to the person that seemed to be in charge, and they called him by his name. Jesus. Some of the people in the group put their coats on Davy's back. Then, to Davy's astonishment, Jesus got on his back. It felt strange to have someone sitting on his back, but Davy was excited too. He started to walk toward Jerusalem, carrying Jesus. As they went down the road, a multitude of people came around and put their coats and palm branches on the ground in front of Davy and Jesus. They began to sing, shout, and wave palms in the air and saying, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, even the King of Israel." Davy was amazed by what he was hearing. He thought, "A king is riding on my back? I can't believe that I've been chosen to carry a king." Look at all the people. They're all excited, waving palm branches. That was a sign of adoration to someone in authority. They're laying their coats on the ground, and here comes Davy. How neat is that? Davy made up his mind to carry the king to the best of his ability. He stepped carefully along the path of coats and palm branches, and he tried to carry Jesus smoothly. See, I'm like riding on a donkey. After Davy and Jesus came back into Jerusalem, Jesus got down and patted Davy's back. Davy watched as he entered the temple. Oh, Davy felt very proud of himself. "I carried the king," he thought. "I must be a very special donkey." The next day, Davy's master decided he was ready for regular work. One of the servants put 2 sacks of olives on Davy's back and set out to deliver them. The sacks were heavy and they scratched Davy's back. Once or twice he got so tired and miserable that he just sat down in the road. But the master's servant tugged on the rope around Davy's neck and pulled him along. There he is, walking home after Jesus was through with him. That's not Jesus, that's the owner, by the way. By the time Davy got home, he was very grumpy. "Why did the master make me carry these olives?" he grumbled to old Barnabas. "I carried the king. I shouldn't have to carry ordinary things." Barnabas frowned. "We're donkeys," he said. Can you frown? We're donkeys. It's our job to carry things. Whatever the master decides to put on our back. Every job is important, even carrying sacks of olives. And you should do your best and do it well. "Humph," said Davy. "I don't think I'll ever enjoy this kind of work. I think I'm better at special jobs like carrying important people." But Davy had to carry things every day. Sometimes he carried sacks of olives. Sometimes one of the servants rode on him for an errand for the master. Davy didn't enjoy any of it. He couldn't understand why his master was giving him ordinary tasks. One morning, one of his masters led Davy to a village on the other side of Jerusalem. They were returning through the city. Davy saw a crowd coming down the street. The people seemed to be shouting angrily at someone as they moved along. The servant led Davy to the side of the road so they could pass. So here's Davy doing unfun jobs. He's got a bunch of sticks on his back, got a bunch of olives here, and look how sad his little eyes are. Miserable, I hate this job. Davy saw the person the people were shouting at. It was Jesus, the king Davy had carried into Jerusalem only a few days before. But now the people seemed furious at Jesus. Davy wondered about that. Then Davy noticed that Jesus was carrying something, a rough, heavy beam of wood. Jesus seemed to be struggling to carry the beam. With a gasp, Davy saw that Jesus was hurt. His back was covered with cuts and bruises, and his head was bleeding where it was being scratched by a circle of sharp thorns. Suddenly, Jesus fell down. He couldn't carry the beam any further. Davy wished with all his heart that he could carry the beam for Jesus. He tugged at his rope, but the servant held him back. The soldiers who were with Jesus grabbed a man from the crowd and made him carry the beam. A very sad story. See, See, there's a portion of the cross. You can't see Jesus, but you can see the cross he's carrying. There's a soldier there. And here's Davy watching, and he wants to help Jesus. Look at all the crows in the tree. The crowd went down the street, and the servant led Davy away. He was confused and sorrowful. They shouldn't have made Jesus carry that awful beam, he thought. He's the king. Why did he have to carry it? Why were they so angry? When he got home, Davy found old Barnabas. I saw something terrible today, he said. The king I carried was hurt, and the people made him carry a big wooden beam. Why did they do that? Barnabas looked at him kindly. I remember when I carried Jesus and his mother home from Bethlehem, he said. His mother and father knew that he would die to save his people. Someone had told them so. It seems that prophecy has come true. The king was carrying the beam of the cross on which he was going to be crucified. There's Davy walking home, all sad. There's all the people. Where are all the people? They moved. Oh, there they are. There's all the people that were up there mad at Jesus, who knew no sin. He never sinned. Davy was amazed. So the king was being a servant to others, he said. Yes, Davy, Barnabas said. It is a terrible thing that he is being treated so badly. But what he is doing is wonderful. Davy was quiet for several minutes. At last he said, if the king was willing to carry that terrible beam, I will not complain about carrying our master's olives. I will follow Jesus' example and be a willing servant. So Barnabas helped him to understand. We should do our work with joy because Jesus worked the work of salvation for us. Grandpa looked at Riley and said, Riley, until that day when Davy was picked to carry Jesus into Jerusalem, he had never been chosen to do anything. His master never picked him even for the easiest task. But the other boys do pick you for games. So I'd like you to try to be thankful for every chance you have to play. Could you do that for me, Riley? Yes, Grandpa, Riley said. You're right. I know I should be thankful to get to play even if I'm the last one chosen. Good, Grandpa said with a smile. Also, do your best to be content with whatever you are asked to do, because every player has important roles. If you are picked to do something special, don't get proud like Davy. If you're given a job that doesn't seem to be much fun, do your best at it anyway. Remember that God chose Jesus for the worst job of all. He did it willingly, to please his Father and to save his people. Wow, you're right, Grandpa, Riley said. I never thought about it that way. Grandpa gave Riley a quick hug. That's my boy, he said. But let me tell you the rest of the story, the part that Davy didn't understand. So there they are sitting on their porch, and Grandpa's being like a good grandpa, telling the rest of the story. And here's the rest of the story. Jesus died on a cross that day. When he died, he gave life to save his people from their sins. In a way, he carried their sin and their guilt. By dying for them, he took the punishment that they deserved for sinning against a holy God. The punishment you and I deserve. He was a king, but he was a servant to his people. And you know what, Riley? Jesus didn't stay dead. He rose again from the grave 3 days later and reigns forever with his Father in heaven. That's the best news of all. Riley grinned. It sure is, Grandpa, he said. He's the greatest king of all, and I want to serve him and do whatever he asks me to do, whether it's a little job or something important. There's Davy carrying a basket full of olives. I love seeing him work happily and cheerfully. Now, I hope you enjoyed this story. If you have questions about it, ask your mommy. If they want you to ask me, you can wait, and I'll talk to you about it. I love you.